Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to another episode of the Wisdom Podcast. As you can see, today's podcast setup is quite unusual. I'm in my bathroom. So, what's the rationale behind this? Well, in the bathroom there's a toilet, and today we're gonna talk about excrement and constipation. But not exactly. I want to bring up a book that I've read many days ago by Slavoj Žižek by the name of The Sublime Object of Ideology. Now, first I'd like to briefly introduce you to Slavoj Žižek. Who is Slavoj Žižek? Slavoj Žižek is a philosopher, a cultural critic, and also a psychoanalyst from Slovenia, who is known to be extremely provocative, and he teaches philosophy at the University of Ljubljana. And the man knows several languages, such as Slovenian, obviously, Croatian, Serbian, English, French, and German. Now, so what is the book The Sublime Object of Ideology? Well, it's a book that is a combination about Lacan's psychoanalysis, Hegel's philosophy, and Marxist theory. Now, I've probably mentioned some names that you're not very familiar with, like Lacan and Hegel. So, who's Hegel? Well, Hegel is a German philosopher who brought up the idea of dialectical thinking. So, what's the dialectical process? Well, an idea is created by coming up with a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis, which is a combination of both the thesis and the antithesis. But in the book, Žižek wants to in a sense, emphasize only on the part where you strip everything down to its core until there's almost nothing left, and you're left with basically the synthesis. And he calls this this process Aufhebung, which in English means sublation. But when I asked my German friend, he said that it means to preserve. And Lacan, who's Lacan? Jacques Lacan is a French psychoanalyst, and he taught Žižek about psychoanalysis, and he brought up many great ideas in psychoanalysis, such as the mirror stage. So what is the mirror stage? The mirror stage is basically a stage in a person's life. So let's say that at some point when we're kids, we look into the mirror and we notice ourselves, the ego. And by noticing oneself, it's either a moment of empowerment or alienation. Because once you recognize yourself, you have to take care of yourself and what others think of you. Okay? Now, I'd like to bring up the preface of the Sublime Object of Ideology, which is the idea's constipation. 3 words. The ideas with apostrophe S, constipation with a question mark. I don't want to go deeper into this because I'll explain why there's constipation. Speaking of constipation, I'd like to bring up to you something Zizek said about toilets. So let me bring it up to you. Zizek said, in a traditional German toilet, the hole in which shit disappears after we flush is right at the front, so that the shit is first laid out for us to sniff and inspect for traces of illness. In a typical French toilet, on the contrary, the hole is at the back, i.e., shit is supposed to disappear as quickly as possible. Finally, the American Anglo-Saxon toilet presents a synthesis, a mediation between these opposites. The toilet basin is full of water so that the shit floats in it, visible but not to be inspected. It is clear that none of these versions can be accounted for in purely utilitarian terms. Each involves a certain ideological perception of how the subject should relate to excrement. Hegel was among the first to see the geographical triad of Germany, France, and England, an expression of three different existential attitudes: reflective thoroughness, which is German; revolutionary radicalism, revolutionary hastiness, which is French; and utilitarian pragmatism, which is English. In political terms, this triad can be read as German conservatism, French revolutionary radicalism, and English liberalism. The point about toilets is that they enable us not only to discern this triad in the most intimate domain, but also to identify its underlying mechanism in the three different attitudes towards excremental excess: an ambiguous contemplative fascination, a wish to get rid of it as fast as possible; a pragmatic decision to treat it as an ordinary and dispose of the excrement in an appropriate way. It is easy for an academic at a round table to claim that we live in a post-ideological universe, but the moment he visits the laboratory after the heated discussion, he is again knee-deep in ideology. This is just something I thought it would be funny to you. And speaking of post-ideological, I can say that we live in a post-ideological world because the Soviet Union collapsed. And I remember someone said that we do not have to talk deep into the night about which form of governance is the best. Well, as a Marxist, I uphold my idea. You know, it's crazy to say this in this this day and age, but I can get shot for that. But let's get personal here. I truly believe that for my country, Marxism works. I'm not gonna go into why, because that would waste the time of our podcast. So we'll leave that for another time of discussion. Now, the preface of the book, "The Ideas Constipation," with a question mark. So I'd like to read the first few passages to all of you. Okay. When a discipline is in crisis, attempts are made to change or supplement its thesis within the terms of its basic framework. A procedure one might call Ptolemization, since when data poured in which clashed with Ptolemy's Earth-centered astronomy, his partisans introduced additional complications to account for the anomalies. But the true Copernican revolution takes place when, instead of just adding complications and changing minor premises, the basic framework itself undergoes a transformation. So, when we are dealing with a self-professed scientific revolution, the question to ask is always, is this truly a Copernican revolution or merely a Ptolemization of the old paradigm? Two examples of, okay, so I'd first like to explain to you Ptolemization and the Copernican revolution. Back in ancient Greece, there was a guy by the name of Ptolemy who believed that the Earth is at the center of the universe, which is completely wrong. However, many years later, a guy by the name of, I believe, Nicholas Copernicus said that no, the Earth is not at the center of the universe, but he believed in heliocentrism, which means that the sun is in the center of a solar system. And this was later coined as the Copernican revolution. However, fans or partisans of Ptolemy disagree with this revolution still, and they do what's called a process called Ptolemization. And what they did is they would add elements, or let's say, elements that would support Ptolemy's claim. And you can see how these two processes oppose each other, where you try to fill in gaps for Ptolemization. For Ptolemization, you try to fill in gaps to make something more complete, even though there are contradictions. I'd like to continue. Two examples of Ptolemization. There are good reasons to claim that string theory, which claims to provide the foundation for a unified theory, a single theoretical framework describing the four fundamental interactions between the subatomic particles that were previously explained separately by relativity theory or quantum physics, remains an attempt at Ptolemization, and that we are still waiting for a new beginning, which will require an even more radical change in the basic presuppositions, something like abandoning time or space as the basic constituents of reality. Likewise, in social theory, there are good reasons to claim that all the new paradigm proposals about the nature of the contemporary world, that we are entering a post-industrial society, a post-modern society, a risk society, an informational society, remain so many Ptolemizations of the old paradigm of classical sociological models. I'd like to give you another example of Ptolemization and a Copernican revolution. I'm not gonna read you everything in the preface. I bet most of you know who Sigmund Freud is, and through his discovery, people still say that his discovery is Ptolemization, because he's just adding new elements to classical psychology. But Zizek said, no. Freud's discovery is a Copernican revolution. Why? Because it links to Hegel's philosophy. Now, Zizek is a big fan of Hegel. And also, Hegel was the person who paved way for a communist revolution in Europe indirectly, because Karl Marx actually studied Hegel's philosophy. But that's sort of irrelevant. Let's see what's on the agenda. And uh, reading through this preface, Zizek brought up what Lacan said about making the right decisions. Sometimes choosing the worst might be the correct option because you're able to learn from those mistakes. Now, let me give you an example. In my country, Cambodia, back then it was called Democratic Kampuchea, we went through a period of radical change when the so-called communist insurgencies took over the country. There was a structural societal change in terms of economics, political, everything. And one of the biggest mistakes is too many killings. Some people were suspected of being anti-revolutionaries. They want to get rid of those who worked for the old regime, the Lonel's regime. And this was a mistake, but we have to learn from our mistakes. I mean, it's one of the biggest philosophies in life is to learn from our mistakes. And I think learning from our mistakes is something that makes us stronger. Now, going back to Hegel, I'm pretty sure I mentioned about synthesis of the idea of Hegel already. Of Hegel is a process of what's the word? Sublation. Now, according to Zizek, he said that we misunderstood Hegel's dialectic process, because to him the process is a process of reduction to a notional determination, so that we would realize an object's unary feature. In French, I think it's called le trait unéa. Now let me give you an example. This is an example in language. Now, I want you to imagine a tree with its roots burrowing deep into the ground. It has a big trunk, branches branching everywhere. It has leaves, lush green leaves all over the branches. It bears lots of fruits, and you can imagine also the wind blowing the leaves. But when we say tree, it's a single word, and that single word sort of compresses the idea of a tree into a notional determination. And so we get rid of the idea of how beautiful a tree can be with its lush leaves, its good-looking fruits. And this is quite depressing. I'll give you another example later on. So yeah, Zizek gave an example in language. When I call someone my teacher, I expect him to teach me, because we define things based on its potentiality. When I say a chair, I expect the thing to be a platform that serves me for me to sit on it. Okay. Now, another example that I promised you. In the 1960s, there was an experiment done on school children, 5-year-old kids. What the experimenter did was he gathered all the kids and he asked them to just draw him a picture of life. You know, it can be something beautiful. And so the kid would draw beautiful things with many colors, very vibrant. But then 2 years later, he asked the same group of kids to draw the exact same thing. And what he realized is that they now the color in the drawings now are mostly gray. And so what can we say about this? Many people would think that school kills creativity. We blame this on the school's apparatus, but according to Zizek, it's a good thing that the children shifted from drawing with colorful colors to just drawing with only gray. And he said that it's a good thing for the children because they're going through a process of growth and development, because they've now filtered the chaos of life, and they basically simplified the idea of what they think life is. And and in my opinion, I kind of agree with Zizek in this point that as we grow older, as we mature, things become a little bit more depressing, but that's okay. We're able to experience life as it is. Okay, what's on the agenda? So Hegel said that the mind is extremely powerful. It is able to compress an idea of a thing into a word, which, if you think about it, it's extremely crazy of how far we've come within evolution, if you believe in that or not. So yeah, that's just what Hegel said. Now, there has been a lot of critics who criticized Hegel's idea of the dialectical process. There was one dude, I forgot his name. He said that the idea of Hegel's dialectical process is the same as constipation, because you're just consuming different ideas and not letting it go. You're just stuff. It's like a human person always eating and not letting the excrement out. You're basically constipated. But Zizek said no. All of you critics misunderstood Hegel. He said that if you see Hegel's dialectics as of Hegel, sublation, after the process of sublation, then comes the process of abrogation, letting go. You're letting go of stuff back into nature because you can't control it, and I'll come back to that later. Because at the end of Hegel's book, The Logic, Hegel said the absolute idea freely releases itself into nature. Now I'll explain to you the absolute later, so we'll just stick to that. We'll get back to it in a moment. And Zizek stated that there could be some emptiness on the path to dialectics, because when you are empty, you are free from illusions, you are capable of openness to truth, you are no longer constipated, you're no longer passive, you become a more active citizen in society. Now, I'd like to go back. Zizek sort of opposed this metaphor of saying that the idea that Hegel brought up is constipation. No, he said that he paints a picture of a person shitting, letting go, abrogation, shitting, pooping. And I remember a quote by Socrates who said, "True wisdom is knowing that you know nothing." So why do I bring this up? Well, in somewhere along the preface, Zizek brought up the idea of understanding versus reasoning. Now, Immanuel Kant, who's also a German philosopher like Hegel, said that one must embrace understanding to understand how things happen. But Hegel said that you must embrace reasoning. You have to understand the underlying mechanisms of stuff. So let's say you are observing a sunset. When you're looking at the sun going down, you understand that the sun is going down. Its color is red. It's beautiful. You wish to see it again. But the reason behind sunset allows you to understand or know more about the physics behind sunsets, about the underlying mechanisms of a sunset, which is, I'd say, more fruitful, more productive than just understanding. You have to come up with reasons for it. Zizek also brought up modern art and the death of God. Before the death of God, which is an idea brought up by Nietzsche, art was more subjective, meaning that there's motivations behind religion, behind the church, more personal expressiveness. But after Nietzsche, art became something more abstract. There's, I'd say, a simplification. I remember someone saying that modern art is like a child peeing on canvas. You're not able to understand everything because it's being too oversimplified. Now, this process of simplification, according to Zizek, is okay because it can help us to find the truth. This is abrogation. Now, Zizek also brought up the idea of absolute knowing, and that he connects it with nature. So, what's absolute knowing? 2 words. Absolute knowing. Now, absolute refers to the subject. I am a subject, you are a subject, they are a subject, he is a subject, she is a subject. Now, what's something to know about subjects? Well, when you are a subject, you're bounded or confined within your transcendental horizon. You can't escape it. You often think of yourself. But there is a paradox, because as a subject you have consciousness, but when you think about an object, you become unconscious because you're no longer thinking of yourself. You are thinking of an object that is outside you. So in a sense, you can find something finite in infinity, but also infinity in finitude. The subject is trapped in itself. It can never experience something outside of it, but at the same time, you can be unconscious. You can never know everything about yourself. And that's basically the paradox of subject. Now, absolute knowing. What's the absolute? Absolute knowing is knowing that you can never know enough. It's impossible for you to know enough. I've said the quote that true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. And so we can never truly recognize ourselves. I'd like to bring up an example of a Chinese philosopher by the name of Zhuangzi, who dreamt of himself being a butterfly. Now, let me quote the quote for you. Okay, so here's Zhuangzi's dream. Once, Zhuangzi dreamt he was a butterfly, fluttering about, enjoying itself. He did not know it was Zhuangzi. Suddenly he woke up, and there he was, solid and unmistakable Zhuangzi. But did he know not if he was Zhuangzi who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was Zhuangzi? Now, this is an absolute mind F word, because we can never know if we are a butterfly dreaming that we're humans. And what can we say about this? We can say that the reality is just a symbol, and language is also a symbol, and I find this quite scary sometimes, because I can't know for sure if everything around me is real or not. Zizek also mentioned that sometimes the subjects split. We're split into many different pieces, and sometimes it affects who we are, it affects our identity, and how we perceive the world. And going back to Aufhebung, with the dialectical process, ideas are always incomplete, or in Zizek's term that he coined, non-all. Because according to Zizek, the idea of the idea of Aufhebung, or sublation, is to rip everything, tearing everything apart to its core, like as he gave an example in the book, eating an apple till you have the core left, or let's say you pluck away pieces of an artichoke, and when you strip everything down from its immediacy of nature, you make things more depressing. But according to Zizek, it's okay. it's a process of growth, development. It's something good. Now, how do we reconcile with this incompleteness? Well, one thing we can do is we can embrace it. Just embrace this incompleteness. Don't try to fill in the gaps. Don't try to polemize. Going back to what we're talking about. Don't try to polemize things, because polemizing things is extremely toxic. It is extremely unhealthy. We shouldn't do that. And for me, I see the dialectical process as untangling. At the start, we are entirely entangled in the immediacy of nature and fully absorbed in the world. Through the dialectical process, we abstract ourselves from the world and reduce it to its nominal determination. Once we reach absolute knowing, we release the world from ourselves and allow it to follow its own path. So that's what I've written in my agenda. And if you think about it in a POV point of view, Hegel's dialectical process is a process without subject. Why do I say this? Because, as I've mentioned earlier, there's fragmentation within the subject. The subject is split. So the question is, how can we find the truth with Hegel's dialectic process? Well, if we go through the dialectical movement, we can see that the truth is not a snapshot. It's not one thing that is still. It's a process that keeps on growing and developing. And it's a matter of time until we find the truth. And going back to the title, The Idea's Constipation, according to Zizek, the answer to that question is no. The idea is not constipated. We misunderstood Hegel because we have to let go of the excrement. Thank you very much. I'll see you later.